a special interview that I have. This interview will be seen on both the Progressive Queens and on Tracy Takes On. Each of those shows will be in the section link. And as always, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. I am joined by my guest, Colin Bird, who is running for office, and I'm going to let him tell which office because for some reason I forgot.
Yeah, so good evening. Thank you so much for having me. It's a beautiful day, and I'm a candidate for U.S. Senate here in the great state of Maryland.
What state again? I'm sorry.
State of Maryland.
Maryland. Okay, so you're not running for a seat in D.C., you're running at the local level.
So I'm running for U.S. Senate to represent the state of Maryland in Congress in the U.S. Senate.
Oh, in the Okay, see now thank you for correcting me on that. Thank you. So,
No worries.
First question: what what made you come to the decision to run?
Absolutely. So first of all, I'm humbled and grateful right now to serve as the youngest African American mayor in America. Mayor of my hometown, Greenbelt, Maryland, here in Prince George's County, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. And it's really my experiences as mayor and some of the things that I've witnessed in terms of the impact of the decisions in Washington on the people that I represent, the people in my community, Greenbelt residents, and really people throughout Prince George's County and the state of Maryland that convinced me, that encouraged me, that motivated me to say, hey, look, I cannot be on the sidelines when it comes to some of these battles in Washington. So I give a few examples, and it's the pandemic in particular that really served as the tipping point and things that happened as part of that in Washington. So, for example, on the first stimulus bill that Congress passed to address the pandemic, the CARES Act, it actually did a number of good things, including providing $1,200 stimulus checks. Frankly, I think it could have been more, but actually the big issue was it provided state and local government aid. But the local government aid that was provided in that bill actually excluded over 99.9% of the municipalities in in America. And that includes small and medium-sized municipalities, small and medium-sized cities and towns like Greenbelt, Maryland. So if you were in a big city like New York or Boston or St. Louis or Detroit, or any other big city, your city got taken care of directly as part of the CARES Act. But if you were in a city like Greenbelt, your city actually did not get that local government aid directly as part of the CARES Act. And that impacted cities and towns all across the state of Maryland. So I was very concerned that Congress, and in particular the U.S. Senate, would allow something like that without fighting for the people of my town, the people of my city, Greenbelt, Maryland. So that's number one. And then one of the most concerning things that really was the tipping point for me to say, you know what, I need to run for U.S. Senate in particular, was looking at the most recent stimulus bill, the American Rescue Plan. And again, that bill did a number of good things. I'm not here to say that it was all bad, but one of the biggest challenges, well, there were several issues with that bill. Number one, they promised $2,000 stimulus checks. And as you know, they ended up cutting $1,400 stimulus checks. They shorted the American people $600. They lied to the American people. They told folks, vote for the Democrats in Georgia. They'll give you $2,000 checks, turned it into $1,400 within a matter of weeks, if not months. That's number one. I thought that type of promise being broken in that callous way was very problematic because that impacts my constituents. Number two, in that bill, they actually in the U.S. Senate stripped the minimum wage, the $15 minimum wage out of the bill. They allowed the Senate parliamentarian to dictate whether the minimum wage would be in the bill instead of ignoring the parliamentarian or supporting the firing of that parliamentarian, because she, and in particular, following her ruling, meant hundreds of thousands more Americans would be left in poverty because they have a minimum wage that is significantly too low. It's $7.25 an hour in these United States of America. Number three, they actually lowered the weekly unemployment benefits that were a part of that bill. And again, this is something that impacts my constituents and people all throughout Maryland who have been laid off or otherwise unemployed, largely as a result of COVID-19 and business impacts and closures that have happened related to that. So, from my standpoint, I was really concerned about that, and I guess I'll close on this point in terms of what drew me into this. We have a Congress and we have U.S. senators who really are out of touch with local communities, and there are several issues happening on a local level where our U.S. senators, and in particular the one that I'm running against, has been absent from the conversation or on the wrong side of it. We have a project called the Maglev that would devastate Greenbelt. It would devastate residential properties, devastate schools locally throughout the county, and it would devastate parks, wildlife, our forest preserve, trees. I mean, you name it. In NASA, our federal agencies, they would be devastated by this project, and yet we don't have a U.S. senator who is opposed to the maglev. And there's a number of issues that we could talk about that fall in the category of a local issue where our U.S. senators aren't on the right side of it. And so I just felt like it was important for the little guy, the little gal, and the people in small and medium-sized cities like Greenbelt to actually be taken seriously by our U.S. Senate, and in particular by U.S. senators here in Maryland.
I have a coughing attack, so I'm going to pause this for a second.
No worries at all.
Okay, so you talked about what made you want to run. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you're more leaning towards the progressive side of things, as opposed to what we're currently experiencing now. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. And not only am I more leaning toward the progressive side of things, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have in Congress is that there's a dearth of progressive leaders in the House and in the U.S. Senate, but even more so in the U.S. Senate. There's only one U.S. senator in America who's a part of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. That is Senator Bernie Sanders, whom I actually served as a delegate to the Democratic National Convention for in 2016. But, even he from time to time, we need to make sure that we keep him honest on certain issues related to progressives' priorities. I support Medicare for all. I support a Green New Deal. And I would be one of those individuals pushing for the caucus and for the Senate as a whole to be moving further in the direction of those types of policy priorities, because frankly, we do have a broken healthcare system, and we do have a climate that is changing at a rate that is threatening the very sustainability and the very viability of this planet, of this country, and of this state. And so, from my standpoint, we can't provide Band-Aid solutions, lukewarm, moderate milquetoast solutions to these types of big issues. One of the things that I've talked about is the fact that I believe in what I call the audacity of progressives. Now, what's the audacity of progressives? The audacity of progressives is the belief that change can't wait, that change has to be big, and that change has to be bold. I believe all of the above are necessary. Ideas when we talk about the type of change that we need in America. And the reason is, I think for too long in America, we've had people focusing on the American dream when what too many people in America actually experience is the American nightmare, right? Police brutality, that's the American nightmare. Poverty, that's the American nightmare. Undereducation, miseducation, that is the American nightmare. Bad healthcare, that is the American nightmare. Sexism, racism, all kinds of ism, those are the American nightmares. And the only way to end a nightmare, you and I know this fundamentally from growing up, is to wake up and rise up. So part of my campaign is to wake the people up. If they are woken up, I do believe that they will rise up and send folks packing that are not standing for the people, standing with the people, and serving the people with the utmost distinction and honor. And so, that's what I think that we really need. We talked about Medicare, we talked about a Green New Deal. We need to ban fracking. We need to expand the Supreme Court, pack the Supreme Court, because we have to undo the injustices that were appointed to the bench by former President Donald Trump, and even prior to that, George Bush, right? We need Black women on the U.S. Supreme Court. The only way we get that done is to expand the court so that can happen ASAP, today, not tomorrow.
You just brought up, I don't know if you watched the podcast, but you just brought up something that I went on a tear about, because I don't understand, and maybe you can explain this to me where I can get it. I'm assuming you're running as a Democrat. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So my thing is with the Democratic Party is they have the power now. They're in the position of power. But for some reason, it's like they don't either want to use it or they don't know how to use it or a combination of the two.
Absolutely. So one of the things that and this gets back to what I was saying before about how they campaigned to get the Senate the Senate majority by winning Georgia, and they made a very explicit, clear, unequivocal promise for $2,000 stimulus checks, and yet they get the power and they do the exact opposite. From my standpoint, and I was literally looking at some of this stuff today, even in our state, Republicans are not who we need in Congress, right? They're not who we need in the White House. They're not who we need making decisions in governors' mansions throughout these United States of America. But if we're totally honest with ourselves, there are a lot of Democrats like Joe Manchin, like Kirsten Sinema, but there are also other Democrats within the U.S. Senate and within the U.S. House of Representatives that have policy positions that are adverse to the interests of ordinary Americans, of everyday people like you and me. And so, yeah, I've found it very important for us to not get swept into this notion that every person that has a D behind their name is necessarily going to be of by and for the people, right? We have to start to make these distinctions and to really try to separate the separate things out and really be clear about where people stand on important issues. I'm represented by a U.S. senator who has never co-sponsored a Medicare for All bill, right? And so when you look at the type of healthcare disparities that are omnipresent throughout the state of Maryland, but even in Prince George's County in particular, which is the diabetes capital of the United States of America, I think we have to be cognizant of the challenges that are exacerbated by having a U.S. senator that does not support Medicare for all. When we look at our climate, we have to be worried about a senator who voted for the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which was negotiated by the Trump administration. Because if you recall, that agreement was a trade deal that was actually opposed by Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, opposed by Senator Chuck Schumer, opposed by many progressive Democrats because it did not do enough to address prescription drug prices, because it did not do enough to address climate change, right? So there are clear consequences to the types of policy decisions that our U.S. senators make, regardless of which party they're in. And if we don't wake up about this stuff, I believe we're going to continue to experience the American nightmare in every way, shape, and form that it can manifest itself. I get another great example: vaccine inequity, right? Vaccine inequity is something that was definitely perpetuated by governors like the governor that represents us, Republican Governor Larry Hogan. But we also need to have a conversation about the fact that the vaccine came from the federal government, right? It was the federal government that was charged with the distribution of the vaccine throughout the United States of America.
Absolutely.
So when we think about how inequitable that vaccine rollout was, how piss poor the vaccine rollout was in states like Maryland, but all throughout the country, we need to ask why we didn't have federal representatives doing more to address vaccine inequity and make sure that rollout was seamless, so that we didn't see more folks, particularly of color, get sick and ultimately die, right? These are critical issues, right? And so that's, things that are on my mind as to why we have to look beyond, Democrat. I support the Democratic Party as much as the next guy. I mean, I voted for Joe Biden over Donald Trump, and that was easy. But until we can tease out the fact that we do need the president to move on Medicare for all, we do need the president to move on fracking, we do need the president to move on these other issues that are tough. I think we're going to continue to experience, like I said, bits and pieces of this American nightmare.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that you're making. I normally don't ask people to talk about their opponents, But I want you to talk about you don't have to name your opponent, but if you want to, you can. Say something, I'll challenge you this way. Say something positive about your candidate.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, I don't have any problem. That's another thing about me. I really don't have any problem saying anything positive about my opponent. So I'll say a number of positive things about him. I think that, especially relative to some other people, he's reasonably accessible to, I would say, an elected official like myself. I've had an opportunity to talk with him on the phone a number of times, and I've also had an opportunity to work with him on a few issues. Um, so, I mean, I can say that about him. You know, I think that that's what I can say positive about him. There's some limitations to the way he operates, but I definitely can tell you that I've had an opportunity to work with him, for example, on trying to address issues around the death penalty, around trying to address issues of symbols of white supremacy here in the state of Maryland, and on trying to recognize tremendous Marylanders who are Marylanders of color or Black Marylanders like Harriet Tubman. So, I've had an opportunity to interface with him on those types of issues, and I found him to be reasonably responsible in those types of issues. But again, it's not enough.
Yeah, understand. Now I'm gonna flip the question. You brought it up, so talk about the limitations of the candidate and where you stand different as opposed to the candidate.
So again, he does not support Medicare for all. I think that's really bad when we start talking about America's broken healthcare system. That's what we need, is Medicare for all. Beyond that, like I said, he supported the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. He did not fight for small and medium-sized municipalities when it came to the CARES Act and with these stimulus bills that harms local communities and the people who live in them. In this most recent stimulus bill, his chamber, and he's part of that chamber, stripped the minimum wage out of the stimulus bill, lowered the weekly unemployment benefits, and broke its own promise regarding $2,000 stimulus checks. Beyond that, I can tell you that, for me, the big challenge is, like I give one great example. So a lot of times the things that he does do right, I think he has to be really begged and pleaded on. Whereas I kind of try to be more proactive and really do the right thing without being begged, right? I think if you have power, you should do something good with it for the good with it for the people without it, without being begged. I believe that he thinks that if you have power, you should sit on it. For the people without it, for the people with it, no questions asked. And if you make that distinction and you understand that distinction, you know that while he may do some good things from time to time, the big limitation is the difficulty it takes to get him to yes, the difficulties that it takes to get him to the right position on an issue. I'll give another great example. We talked about Medicare for all, but I'll give a local issue, and that is the Red Line. That is a project that was it's a transit project that was actually canceled by our incumbent Republican governor, Larry Hogan. And that was a very bad move by him. But I think that the Senate and I think Congress should be pushing to revive that project, particularly as part of this infrastructure bill, and particularly in terms of advocacy with the U.S. Department of Transportation. However, here's the issue. I not only think that they should revive that project, I think that they need to reopen the civil rights investigation that was opened up by the Obama administration into Governor Hogan's cancellation of that project, because it's not just enough to revive the project. We also need to hold the Hogan administration accountable for canceling that project, because that cancellation of that project had a disproportionately negative impact on Black Marylanders, and in particular, Black Baltimoreans, Black residents of Baltimore. There were civil rights violations and allegations associated with his cancellation of that project, and we cannot turn a blind eye to that injustice as we move forward on this infrastructure bill and start to address the transit gaps that continue to remain in places like Baltimore, transit gaps that negatively impact access to jobs and economic opportunity for folks in that region of the state.
Yeah, that was great. I want you to talk about briefly as you're campaigning amidst this pandemic, some of the challenges that you're facing. Do you have a volunteer staff? I'm pretty sure they're not going door to door necessarily, not during this pandemic, or maybe they are. I don't know. What kind of measures are you taking to reach out to the masses during this pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we're using, virtual methods to communicate, social media, that type of thing, because of course, there's a lot of guidelines that remain in place around social distancing. Of course, things are getting a little better because now folks are getting vaccinated. The percentage of people who is fully vaccinated in the region and in the state, though, is not quite high enough for us to act like there's no pandemic. We're still living in a global pandemic, and we should be acting like it. Um, you know, Look, this pandemic has been, again, part of that American nightmare, right? We've seen people get sick. We've seen scores of people die. And we've also seen massive impacts on local businesses, economic impacts that are tremendous on ordinary Americans. And those include so many people that I represent and so many people that I hope to represent as the next U.S. Senator from the state of Maryland. So you have that, and then you compound that with the fact that, in this country, there's a real reckoning that has been going on, not only over the past year, but certainly heightened over the past year around racial injustice, right? Around the treatment of people of color, and in particular African Americans, and even more particular African American men by law enforcement, but not just African American men, but also women like Breonna Taylor. And I mean, you name Dante, right? I mean, you name the person. There are so many names that kind of are either in a graveyard or on the wrong end of excessive force in American history, and on the wrong end of the justice system, right? For every George Floyd that has a killer that actually gets convicted, think about how many individuals don't get convicted, and the type of trauma that has on the family, and beyond the family, the community, and beyond the community, the county, the state, and the country, as we agonize about the state of race relations and the state of justice in this country. I remember that I first got interested in a lot of this stuff in the wake of the killing of Trayvon Martin in Sanford, Florida, right? In the wake of the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, right? I say all of this to say that this is probably the most challenging time in American history for anybody to be a leader. And so I don't take it lightly, the challenges that the incumbent U.S. Senator faces in navigating these challenges. But I think as a young Black man, as the youngest African American mayor in America, and as the mayor of Greenbelt, Maryland, I think I have something unique to offer in terms of, weaving that experience, right? Weaving that observation, that on the ground observation and perspective about some of this stuff into public policy that can be meaningful, transformative, and powerful, impactful for the people in this great state. So I look forward to the opportunity to kind of bring all of those attributes to bear.
Now, are you approaching because I don't know, is your opponent a Democrat also, or is he on a Republican?
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So yeah. So my opponent is he's a Democrat. Now here's another thing that I just want to add in as a caveat. He may or may not run for re-election, right? This is not guaranteed. Sometimes people do retire unexpectedly early. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances that can impact whether somebody actually ends up being on the ballot in 2022. But as it stands, the incumbent will be running again. I don't see any specific indication to suggest otherwise. And yes, he's a Democrat. He's a more conservative Democrat, of course, but he is a Democrat. I'll give him that. I will say that our Republican governor, Larry Hogan, is rumored to be considering a run for U.S. Senate here in the great state of Maryland. And I think that it's also important for us to be mindful of that as we think about the primary, because we want to ultimately be successful if he does step up and run for U.S. Senate here in Maryland. I think I could actually be more effective in a campaign against him than the incumbent U.S. Senator.
So your election, is it this year or next year?
Yeah, it's June of 2022.
Oh, so okay, so you
So
did
it's
what
next year.
okay, so I love when people prepare because I've always complained about that with candidates I don't know. I'm like, why are you waiting until 3 weeks
We're
before decide to run? I don't.
no, we're gonna get in on the ground floor, and we're gonna build this ground up.
Yeah. Now, what I did see from you, and I probably should have saved this question at the end. Do you have a website for people that want to learn more about your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for asking. My website is colinbyrdforsenate.com. So that's going to be COLINBYRDFOR Senate.com. I think as well, if folks want to get a hold of me, they can obviously reach me on Twitter, twitter.com/Mayor Byrd, at Mayor Byrd. That's Bird with a Y. And then on Facebook at Vote Colin Byrd. On Facebook at Vote Colin Byrd. But yeah, those are three really good ways to get a hold of me. And I can also share, my email address, which is colinaByrd@gmail.com. Again, it's colinaByrd@gmail.com. I used to give out my cell phone number, and I'm happy to do that on a case-by-case basis. But, things are getting to the point where maybe that's not the most prudent thing for me to do with most folks.
Now, as you're, you said you had some challenges, of course, campaigning with COVID, but as I'm sure you're speaking to people who you ultimately want to vote for you, what kind of concerns are they raising to you?
I mean, like I said, this is a devastating pandemic. I think that's top of mind for so many people. The vaccine, um, and that's getting better. That issue is getting better. We're hearing less of that being an access issue now than it was at the beginning. But that's definitely an issue. Also, just all of the economic issues in and around the pandemic, right? So people, housing security issues, food security issues. Um, beyond that, transportation is becoming something I'm hearing more about. Um, Also, healthcare. The vaccine is one thing, but really thinking through the broader healthcare issues that people face both before and after this pandemic is a big deal. Pre-existing conditions, right? Those are things that a lot of people grapple with. And the price of healthcare, the price of prescription drugs. Those are some of the big things. And of course, again, I can't stress this enough, issues around justice and equity, whether it's on a racial level, whether it's from a racial perspective or a gender perspective or, really any other type of, all of the isms. Those are things that I think are really, really critical to folks right now. Just we want to turn the page on all of the darkest chapters in American history, but it's almost like the pages are stuck, right? And it's tough to kind of to get to that next step. And so, you know, I think that's part of what folks are really been talking with me about.
I also love to raise this issue with candidates that I get to interview, and I want to talk about fundraising. We know that money is necessary to run campaigns. However, it seems as though we have politicians on both sides, whether they got a D behind their name or R behind their name, they're emboldened to the corporations. What is it that you can tell a supporter of yours that would make you stand out from all the others that take the corporate PAC money?
Well, step one is I don't take that corporate PAC money, right? I don't raise money from those type of interests. I mean, I don't raise money from developers and high powered corporate lobbyists and none of that, right? So in some ways that puts me at a disadvantage when it comes to raising a bunch of money from small number of individuals. But I think there's an advantage in the sense that I can continue to be beholden to the people, right, rather than the people in power. And so I'm grateful that we are able to kind of run without those encumbrances. But yeah, that's something that I would say is a real distinction. And look, look, money talks, right? And folks should follow the money, and get a sense of who's calling the shots with some of these politicians, right? Because oftentimes when you take a look at the sources of their money, you get a sense for the sources of their public policy. And so, when you think about the impact that big pharma has had on politicians, including the one that I'm running against, right? You start to understand why he may vote a certain way on certain issues. When you think about the impact that the defense industry, big warmongering companies have had on these politicians, you start to really get a sense of what's going on. And when you think about the types of impacts that these wealthy individuals have, you start to get a sense of why certain politicians tend to be less apt to tax the rich. And so, these are things that we need to do, though, right? We need to tax the rich. We need that revenue, because with that revenue, we can really start to solve in a really meaningful way the problems of these United States of America, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's economic, whether it's healthcare, whether it's educational or otherwise, right? These things all look. Vision is great, but vision without money is hallucination. I'll say that again. Vision is great, but vision without money is hallucination.
Exactly.
So I'm less concerned about the money that's coming into my campaign coffers than I am with the money that's coming into the treasury of the United States of America that we can use to benefit the American people. And that's why we need to tax the rich. That's why we need to tax these corporations. But again, those donations sometimes get in the way of the type of public policy that we need.
Yeah, and that's we talk about that all the time on the Progressive Queens, all the time, because it's really sad to see how some of these politicians have bended their ears towards, okay, I'll do X, Y, and Z because you gave $100,000 to me, and their decisions are being rooted by the dollars that they get. And if I was I'm a voter, but if I was a person that never voted, I don't know if I would want to vote, because my thought would be, well, aren't they all the same? And I'm glad that you made that distinction first, that you don't take, political action committee money, because that makes a huge difference in terms of, speaking to a voter saying, hey, no, I'm going to be different because of this, this, and this, and I won't be beholden to, I don't know, ABC Corporation. I'll be beholden to you. And so I think that's really, really important that you made that distinction. And I'm glad that you did it voluntarily. That just made a huge difference. So thank you for that. But I did want to do a couple more things here, and I want to play word association. I'm going to give you a word or a person's name, and the first thing that comes to your mind, just say it. Cool. So the first name I will give you is Joe Manchin.
I'm not that good at this, I guess. Conservative.
Oh, you didn't say Democrat. Okay. Okay. How about Bernie Sanders?
Compassionate.
Okay, that's a good one. Jamal Bowman.
Champion.
Final one, Joe Biden.
Good-natured. I know that's kind of 2 words, but it's hyphenated.
Oh, you're gonna. I had a different word for Joe Biden, but since you're the one I'm interviewing you and not the other way around, I will just I will not say mine. But those were pretty good. You should be thankful, because I gave the first person I did this Donald Trump. We ended up going down a rabbit hole. She was like, that guy's just evil. I'm like, okay, no, I said one word.
Right.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. But the other thing I wanted to touch on, this last question, of course, I already asked you about your social medias and how you're campaigning, is what if I were in Maryland and you were trying to speak to me, or anybody in Maryland rather, about why it is they should vote for you, what one your number one policy would be, and how would you go about getting that number one policy done?
Yeah, I would definitely say Medicare for all. And the way I would go about getting it done is to work with my colleagues and to really work with the people who we represent here in Maryland, across the country, to kind of make it, a thing that's driven bottom up, and make it clear to my colleagues that there's a mandate for us to do something really bold and really transformative when it comes to our healthcare system. Obamacare was something that definitely helped provide insurance to millions of Americans. But if we're candid, there are still scores of Americans who continue to lack health insurance, and even beyond that, there are many more who lack health insurance that is as affordable as they need it to be. And so, from my standpoint, that is what I would focus probably most on, is Medicare for all, candidly.
Well, I want to thank you for. I know we had a whole lot of troubles getting this together, so I'm glad that you were flexible enough to work with me on my ever-changing schedule. Good luck in your campaign. I hope to hear more from your campaign, and of course, offer is always open. If you ever want to be a panelist, be sure to hit me up, and I will definitely make it happen. Thank you so much for this time, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Carson. It was a pleasure. You have a blessed
No,
rest
just
of the
Tracy.
day.
Don't. I'm not old. Just Tracy. Tracy is fine.
Thank you, Tracy. It was a pleasure. You have a blessed rest of the day.
Thank you so much, and have a great evening. Bye-bye. Okay, everyone, that was a great interview. So again, remember to like, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. This interview will be on both the Progressive Queens and Tracy Takes On. So tune in. And I want to say have a great evening, because it's evening when we're doing this taping. So I will see you all later. Bye-bye. Let's see. Okay, hello, audience, and welcome to the Progressive Queens. I'm so glad that you all got to watch that special interview with Colin Byrd, who's running for U.S. Senate in Maryland. And we hope he gets elected, because he's a great progressive. But I'm welcoming you here to another episode of the Progressive Queens, and I'm joined by Mickey and Kat today. Wave hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
We're gonna get right into it with our topics, and then move on to the second half. I want to talk about Matt Gaetz again. I keep thinking he's going to go away, and we're not going to have to hear about him. But this guy is like a cockroach. He will not go away. He will not. And I'm like, okay, either arrest this guy or just do something, because I'm tired of seeing his Rambo looking here on TV. And Mickey,
How do we like that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a QAnon supporter, and their main goal is to stop all the Democrats who are sexually trafficking children, and sucking their brain juice. How do we like her going on a rally tour with Gates.
When I saw that, I'm like, why do they put her? Why does the media even report on her? If she really believes that, she's a true dipwad. And I don't like calling people dipwad because I consider that the lowest of the low. But if she really out here believing that stuff, which I don't think she really does believe that, I think she just says it because unfortunately there's a couple of idiots in her district that buy into that garbage.
I think it should be
That's with
called
the
a
cult
hypocrisy to
mentality.
her.
The cult mentality. A lot of those people do believe it. If you're in a cult, it doesn't matter what your God says is true. They believe it.
I mean, they're sitting there talking about Trump won the election. No, he didn't. I keep just wanting to scream to people, he lost. We didn't want him. Will he go away? He knows he didn't win it.
The thing is, they all know he didn't win it, but what they're doing is they're setting up to basically create this disaster every friggin' election. If their cheating doesn't get them far enough, what they're going to do is try and set up this BS. Example, Arizona. If any audit is more of a crock, it's Arizona, and now they're being brought, like the DOJ is finally going after him. In regards to Gates and Margarine going anywhere. And yes, I will call her Margarine. She's slimy and not of real context and not good for you. It's a hypocrisy to her. And that's the thing is, he had to find someone that was bad enough and believed the BS enough that would be willing to go on it. And I agree with Tracy. I don't think she really believes it, like to some level. But then there's the cult proponent. Like there's a point, I think, where you have a group of people that are agreeing with it just for the money, because it will get them that money. They see what Trump did. Like Trump told all those lies for the last, let's be honest, 6 years. And look at all the money he's managed to accumulate. And is he not still getting the bulk of the donations for the Republican Party? It's just, and they just see this. This is a new money grift, and they all want in on it. Hence why no one's speaking against him. They all want to be named heir apparent. Hoping
Don't forget
money.
the
And
cult
the thing is,
mentality.
yeah,
I constantly use Jim Jones as an example.
yeah,
He didn't just convince almost 1,000 people to drink poison. He convinced them to give it to their children
yeah.
first. What does it take for a parent to give their children poison? That's the cult mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's really apparent with the Republicans. And I've always asked Trump supporters, answer me one question, and they never can. If Trump's a billionaire, like you say he is, why does he need your money?
Yep.
Why is he out here asking for money if he's so rich and so powerful? He needs your money. I still haven't gotten an answer. I don't suspect I ever will. But back to Gates. Now his supposed friend is turning state's evidence on him. And I'm like, okay, so now your wingman is now saying this. And there's apparently some emails of him admitting to sleeping with an underage girl. I'm like, I don't know what resigning would do, but I think it's his best option. Will he do it? Probably not.
Well, he's playing a long game, hoping to play a long game that he can get all of his lies out there, similar to what Barr did with the strategy of denying the Mueller report. Let's get the lies out there and let those get momentum. They travel faster before the truth comes out, i.e., he gets arrested, etc. And that's the thing is, they know that the DOJ is going to take X amount of time, because part of the thing with these investigations, we have to remember, is part of them started when Trump was still in power.
Absolutely.
So I imagine the lawyers for the DOJ that are legitimate are having to comb through these to make sure that of what they are, how they're going to approach it, to ensure that there's any convictions. Because when you have a legal case that's been muddied and jeopardized, and let's be honest, there's probably was information sharing from the previous DOJ and the accused. Matt Gaetz was fully aware, I'm pretty sure, of what was coming down the pipeline when it started to come down the pipeline, or maybe he wasn't. But the push of the matter is, it's going to be, they know they've got X amount of time before the arrest warrants. It's the same as they tried to delay Rudy getting raided, for how long? Because they want to get ahead of this game and keep going. So by the time the arrest comes out and all the information comes out, it's going to be a case of, oh, he told us that was what was going to happen. This is all BS. And that I'll just keep feeding that cult instead of looking at it and saying, okay, logic sequence of events. They now have a witness. They have a witness that's willing to turn, which is his wingman, who they've got with letters or emails or texts that he gave to Roger Stone confessing to the crimes. So this way the pardon could be written properly. And it's just, watching them scramble. If the prosecutors were really going for it, you got to admit, they got to be laughing, because the more these guys talk, the more they confess to their crimes. Like, I think, what did hubby called Rudy? He's the most incompetent confessor of his own crimes. He just keeps going and going. Like, if you were lawyers for them, the biggest thing would be to try and get them off the air. And I know with Gates, have you noticed how he was so careful in regarding his wording regarding the child that was under the age of majority, i.e. 18? And he goes, I have never touched or engaged as an adult male. But when you read the letters that were written to Stone by Gates's wingman, it says that while she was underage, they watched her engaging in sex with 2 other women. So his defense basically is, I didn't have sex with her. But buddy, if you paid for other women to have sex and you watched it, that is a sexual act. Like, if that's your defense, your lawyer should be slapping you, because that's no defense. But I found that interesting when I reread the letter, and I went, oh, so his defense is he hasn't touched her. But no, the fact that you engaged and watched while this all went on means you're part of a conspiracy.
And he's already admitted that he has paid for plane fare, paid for hotel rooms.
Exactly.
He's sex trafficking if he paid for plane fare. He's engaging in prostitution if he paid for hotel rooms. So he's already confessed to all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, these defense lawyers, you can see why Dershowitz has lost his mind completely, because, number one, he's losing his mind, and he's got enough, skeletons in his closet, possibly. I will say allegedly. We are talking Dershowitz, because let's be honest, he retaliates. But one of the things that I find interesting is all these defense attorneys that are also part of the conspiracies that are going to be part of what's going down. And it's going to be an interesting thing. And the thing is, where is Gates going to be formally charged? Would he be charged in Florida? Where will the charges lie? Like, do they matter? Does it matter for federal crimes?
It does. If he watched a child have sex with 2 other people, that's a federal crime. If he had sex with the child, that's a federal crime. Mm-hmm. All the money laundering stuff, that's a state crime, which probably DeSantis would probably
cover up or whatever.
Yeah, he would pardon him. But if he's convicted on the sex crimes, those are federal, period, point blank. And there's only one person I know that could possibly pardon him, and that was Trump, but now he's out of office. So
who is the prosecutor? Because remember when Epstein got busted for everything, right, in Florida decades ago? Like, let's be honest, and then got away with it. Those were federal prosecutors, were they not?
I thought they were state. Now,
Mickey, were they federal or state for
I don't remember.
Well, remember the people that let him off with a slap on the wrist?
I thought because
that was state. That was state.
That was state prosecutors. Okay.
And then the second time they got him, those were federal, and that's when he went to prison and then killed himself. And I'm not going to say allegedly, because I think it was a suicide. I don't think Trump had him killed. That's just
I disagree.
I
I
disagree.
disagree.
I'm with Mickey on this.
Yeah, a lot of people say I'm wrong, but I'm like, I just can't see it.
Why was Barr at that
The
jail?
cameras were, coincidentally, the cameras weren't working. None of the cameras were working.
Yep.
None.
Yeah.
Nobody checked on him. They're supposed to do a suicide check every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Hadn't been done in hours. I'm sorry. Too many coincidences.
And then added on to the fact that Barr visited the prison 2 days before, within 48 hours of his passing away. Then you also have the fact that a man on suicide watch being carefully guarded gets put in a cell with another individual. Like there were so many questionable behaviors that were identified in regards to if it was suicide, suicide would be a fluke. In my mind, it was they took him down. Barr has been involved with Epstein since Barr's dad ran the school that essentially started Epstein's career.
Yep.
Because Barr's dad ran the school that Epstein first worked at as a math teacher that exposed him to all those rich people and all of their kids. And then he went from being a math teacher with not even a proper degrees, which I always found interesting. This was an exclusive private school. And you hired a math teacher, a math tutor with no significant higher math degrees. Okay. And then within a very short time, he lands up directly involved with all of these rich people and setting up. I personally, I think he was hired. He was made as a pimp. He's been a pimp for these rich people since the very beginning.
And when they raided his homes,
Mm-hmm.
they said that they confiscated thousands of videos, audios, journals, written letters,
Yeah.
thousands. It's been over a year, and there has not been one leak,
Mm-hmm.
not one been released. How can that even happen
Well, the
unless
thing is,
there's some rich and famous in those audios and videos?
and one of the things that really, I don't know, if I was the press, I'd be looking into it deeply. You have Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Both of her sisters, one in particular, did all the computer work, the security work for the security services in the US, literally helped build the systems. Those are her twin sisters, her older twin sisters. So I really have some questions on how things are like. This is where transparency, same as with the gate stuff, needs to occur because I have all these questions. Okay, you've got Ghislaine Maxwell sitting in a prison. Number one, she ran around the U.S. for a year and supposedly nobody could find her. I find that supremely doubtful. And then you're dealing with not only and then you find who her family was. Her family has been involved in blackmailing and like her father and her have rich people for decades. Her father ran the newspaper in the UK. Again, they published a lot of scathing reports or held back scathing reports on who they like, what they like. It's always been, Maxwell's death. Her dad's death was even brought under question. Oh, he committed suicide because he was bankrupt. Really? It's amazing how these extremely strong individuals who have forged careers supposedly through all these adversities, they come up against a bankruptcy and they kill themselves. I don't know. I have a hard time accepting that was the result with Epstein. And it's same as I wonder when they're going to because Ghislaine has got information just as deep and just as dark as Epstein had, if not more so because of who her dad was.
I'm surprised that she hasn't suicided. Suicided.
Or
I
had an
expected it a long
accident.
time ago. I expected that a long time ago.
I think the only thing that's stopping any action against her is because of who her sisters are. Because you got to admit, if she came across, like, as much as they separate themselves from her, those are her siblings.
Well, plus the world has their eyes on it now. After Epstein, the world has their eyes on her now. And it would look very suspicious if she also committed suicide.
It's a lot to unpack in those things, but like I said, I'm curious, especially Kate, not to get back to the original subject, but to get back to the
Yeah.
original subject,
Yep.
is who else is involved with this? We know his wingman is involved because he's now confessing like a parrot bird. But how far does this go? Does this go to Santos? Does it go like Trump? Where is this going to stop at? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, when you look at all the involvement in regards to Gates, Gates is involved in the U.S. component of it. But we know for a fact that a lot of these people were going out to outside countries to actually, to be involved with the prostitution and human trafficking. As mentioned in TYT yesterday, Rush Limbaugh used to, got busted coming back from the Dominican Republic with, what was it, a bag of Viagra? What was he going down there for? We've had multiple cases, even look, all these Eastern European brides that you see amongst these rich men. Really? Were these women really brides, or more were they trafficked? Because from what you're seeing when you go over to the UK and Europe, they are busting huge rings. And these are grown women, these are young women, all from Eastern Europe that have tried to leave their homelands there, that get dragged into these human trafficking rings and have absolutely no choice. In the UK, it's a huge issue. Not only are they being horrible to these women, they're actually manipulating the situation with blackmail. You got to think, and that's where I always go back to is who's filming. As Mickey mentioned, the thousands of filming, and the same with the Gates. You're going to tell me none of those people had film, none of those girls had cameras? And I noticed that one of the statements that was made in regards to Gates is somebody said victims have come forward. There was a comment, something about victims. So are the victims the girls? And if that's the case, they probably already have video of what went on. These girls all have phones, right? So it'll be, I think this is where transparency would be really helpful in all of these cases. Without showing their hand, they can say, yes, we are actively pursuing, let's make the statement, we are actively pursuing an investigation into Matt Gaetz for this. Like, say it bluntly, clearly. And the thing is, that's a known, get the straightforward facts out there. And same with people like Jezeline Maxwell. This is what we're doing. It seems like not only do the prosecutors and the DOJ keep quiet, we don't hear mainstream media asking any of these questions.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Why haven't we had mainstream media getting a member, representative of the DOJ saying, are you active? We don't comment on active cases, but we're not asking you to comment on the case. We're asking if you're investigating. It's just, again, the lie is getting out there far farther than the truth is going to when the arrest comes.
Yeah, and you have such a complacent media that does nothing until something major happens, and then they're like, "Oh, we've been I'm gonna just leave that alone because I could go on literally an hour rant on how insufficient I think our media is. But I wanted to move on to the state. Well, not the State of the Union, because it's not called the State of the Union in the president's first year in office. The joint address to the Congress. Okay, I'm gonna save my thoughts on it because I've got a whole lot. What did you guys make of it? And one of the problems I did have was, okay, I didn't hear any substance, but maybe that's just me.
Okay, what I heard was a whole lot of I'm going to and promises, and not one word about fighting for what he's going to. He brought up the $15 minimum again in the address. What happened when it came up? Did he fight for it? He could have had Harris overridden the parliamentarian. Did he? No. But now he's saying he's going to fight for it again. Just about the most important policies that the American people want and need, he is squashing. He promises and doesn't follow through. He does throw out some little crumbs, but when the people are starving, they'll scramble for those crumbs and be grateful for them rather than fighting for the big things. People want $15 minimum, Republicans and Democrats. They want health care for all. They want free college. All the people want it, both sides of the aisle, the voters. And he won't do it. He will not do it. He can stand up there and say it over and over again that he wants this, but he will not fight for it.
Which makes me question, does he really want it? Because
Of course not.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think he really wants any of those things. Oh, I said I was going to hold my thoughts back.
Well, one of my thoughts that I noticed when he was speaking was similar to what Mickey said, is he threw out these words, but every single one of them, he came up with an excuse at the same time of why he couldn't do it. Oh, we'll do this if everyone gets together. We'll do this if this happens. Like everything had, what do you call it? An attachment to it. Everything had, we're going to do this.
A disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. Every single big promise had a disclaimer. And the point is, really, why would it have to have a disclaimer, buddy? You got the house, both houses, just get it through, literally. But no, everything is, oh, once we get them to agree, oh, once we do this. And so essentially, he's got all of his excuses lined up in a row. The way I see it is, every time one of those things doesn't happen, he can throw out that comment, oh, well, we're waiting for everybody to come together and have good feelings about this. Well, how about just go ahead and do it?
I have one question I would love to ask him. The night that Obama was elected, Mitch McConnell got on national television and said, we are going to block every Democratic action. That was over 12 years ago.
Yeah.
They proceeded to do it for 12 years. He stated it and restated it over and over. And just a couple of days ago, McConnell again said, my 100% job is to block all Democratic actions. Okay, Biden, here's my question for you. What part of him saying that and doing it for 12 and a half years and continuing to say it are you not listening to?
Yep. Exactly, Mickey. Exactly.
That's the exact point I want to make. And I don't know if you all watched my video of I did the live reaction. I had a couple problems with this speech. Number one, I'm like, if you don't stop saying in conclusion and keep going, I'm literally will you stop saying in conclusion? When you say in conclusion, you're supposed to be finished with it. That was my number one adjective that just really bugged me. The second thing was, and I thank goodness for C-SPAN, because I could not have taken the other channels addressing it, because if I had heard him one more time making a significance, I'm sitting in front of two women and I don't care. Those could have been two old white guys. I don't care. I care about what you're saying. To me, it was a whole bunch of, okay, I'm just going to say this to appease my base. I'm going to make Blue MAGA happy. And then at the same time, like you said, he's blaming Republicans. But I think it's because he doesn't want anything he's talking about. He knows that the majority of Democrats, 80% of Democrats are for Medicare for all. Of course, he's vehemently said he's going to vote against that. But I think when he said that whole healthcare is a human right, I'm like, oh, really? So you're going to expand the Affordable Care Act, which is garbage. And now you're going to say that now you're going to say healthcare is a right. Okay, if that's true, then be for Medicare for all. The corporate tax is not enough. It's just not. I don't think 35% is enough. Personally, I think it should be 42%, but that's just me. That's how crazy, wacko, liberal I am. I think it should be 42% on some of these corporations. If they want to go overseas, tax them overseas.
One of his campaign promises was he was going to completely roll back Trump's tax cuts.
Yeah.
They were 35%, which I agree, Tracy, is very low. They were 35%. Trump cut it to 21. Biden said he was going to roll it back. Then he decided he was going to roll it back to 28. Now he's wavering to maybe go down to 25. What part of rollback is increasing it by 3 or 4% instead of going up full 14?
And you know what?
And when you look at the history of the U.S. economically, and you look at especially the corporate tax rate, you see what literally happened as the corporate tax rate got lowered and lowered, and less money went into from the actual corporations to the taxes. Like, let's be honest, those are a huge bulk of the taxes that both of our countries collect. And then what do you see? You see an increase in social programs getting cut. You see an increase in homelessness. You literally can watch the corporate tax rate start to go down and down. And in some cases, it's not even the tax rate. They just got more and more loopholes to avoid paying taxes. And then you just see an increase in what's happening in the social world, i.e. there's no money for homeless, there's no money for childcare, there's no money for any of the social services. And it's directly linked to the corporate taxes and the decrease in that of the money that was being collected. Essentially, American people, all your money is just going to support the military. If you had to corporate dollars.
You know what makes me absolutely frustrated about this, though? The Democratic Party, when they lose the House in 2 years, which they will if they keep on this track, they're going to blame progressives. I can already see it coming. They're going to blame progressives for them losing the House because we're too radical with our ideas. Instead of the whole thing with the Democratic Party, they seem to want to blame Manchin for everything that goes wrong. Okay, you're letting him exercise that power. Have you never heard of a commercial? Have you never heard of a bill?
Yeah.
Have you never heard of engaging the people of West Virginia to pick up it's like they don't, it's like, I'm going to say it, they don't give a rat's behind about people.
If Biden wanted Manchin on his side, he would bring him in his office and quietly talk to him and say, what projects do you want in your state? We'll give you a little pork. You vote our way. That would work. Because
would it work with Manchin? Would it work with Manchin?
I think so, because if the people in his state, and they let them know that Manchin said, I got this for you, I got this, and I got this, they're going to vote him in again. And he knows that.
But the thing is, from what I'm gathering, the Republicans are going around and all of the things that are coming forward in the infrastructure, they are literally lying. Even the ones who voted against any of the relief bills and the against the infrastructure, they're going back to their states. And this is, again, back to Tracy's comment. Where are the commercials? Where is the advertising? Where is it the Democrats going, hey, these are the people who voted against it. We are the people that voted for it. We are bringing you this to run front run on these the Republicans going around and going back to their districts and going, we're getting this bridge replaced and it's my activity, my extra work that's gotten this. When the truth is they voted against it. And where are the ads? This assumption.
You know how many people don't believe that? People don't believe that. I have argued with so many people when I tell them your governor, your senator, and your representative voted against you getting $1,400, voted against you getting the child tax credit. They don't believe me.
Yeah.
I say, well, either go to C-SPAN where all the hearings, the Senate hearings, are taped. There's no fudging, no photoshopping there. If you don't believe that, go to the government website, and I've got the link, and it'll tell you who voted for and who voted against.
Yep.
They will not go look. You give them the link, they will not click on it, and they insist that their senator or their representative voted for it because they're all out there. All these Republicans, the senators and representatives, are taking credit for it.
And they get
lying through their teeth.
They get to shape the argument, and the Democrats are just like, okay, whatever. Let's just let me tell you what. If I hear the word bipartisanship one more time, you don't bipartisanship. Well, first of all, you're assuming there's only two parties. That's the number one problem I have with it. But bipartisanship, when you have the numbers, why are you uttering anything about bipartisanship? Look, if it's me, I'm saying, look, we're gonna ram this, and this in.
Exactly.
Go to your district and get more of the other side elected, because this is
you're right. They need to make ads. They need to make ads, and in those ads, have the video from the hearing, Senate hearing, have the video where they show the votes being counted at the very end.
And the thing is, how hard would that be?
Think about it.
We go back to our discussions before. The Democrats would, muck up the Lord's Prayer if they tried to say it seriously. Like they seem to work at losing. How hard? Exactly what Mickey said. Is every state where they had representatives and senator voting against it, you have the Democrat nominee, whatever, that wants to get into that state, or even Biden himself or someone from that state with that playing behind him. They're trying to tell you this is what they actually did. And for all of the Republican states, why can't they do that? That's not even a hard find. Like Mickey said, you grab the C-SPAN video, you have somebody saying what actually happened, and you push it out there.
You don't even have to have
local, so it's not even that expensive.
You don't even have to have someone to play a sample. Just use their own words. You could literally take tapes of Mitch McConnell. I'm gonna have to be careful what I call him. Mitch McConnell saying, no, he's not gonna vote for this. You don't have to have a narrator. Just use their own words. The Democratic Party, the DNC, or whatever it is they call themselves, they have millions of dollars that they could do this.
Yeah.
But yet, it's like, I say it all the time. The Democrats love to be losers.
You're right. They would much rather lose. They'd much rather lose so they can get up there and say, we are the party of the people. We are the working people's party. We want this for you. But the Republicans take it away. They want that excuse.
It's victimhood at its finest. And the thing is, it's working to lose. And that's the part that I find really frustrating when I see these things happening. Call it out. Let's be honest. Okay, what have they called out the Dems for in the last 6 years? Anything that is actually legitimate? No, they had their Pizzagate. They had all these other bull crap conspiracy theories. Why don't the Democrats go forward with the facts? We saw the change. One of the good examples was that group of boys that got together. I shouldn't call them boys, they're all men. Midas Touch. And one of their best things they did is just put forward the facts. That's all they did. The boys just kept firing. I keep calling them boys. These men just keep firing out the facts. And that helped a lot. And the thing is, it wasn't even like literally that much effort. They said, this is what happened. This is what they're trying to say. And the thing is, it seems like an easy win for me. Like the millions of dollars the Dems have, as Tracy pointed out, Mickey pointed out, we've got all the videos in C-SPAN. There's a way to win this. And it doesn't take a lot of effort. And and the only way I can see it, are you telling me all these political strategists that have been doing this for literally decades that haven't thought of this? No, this is corporate Dems and the corporate Republicans, which are most of them, all being told by their backers, and let's be honest, their backers, is not to fight back hard, not to fight back and throw the mud. And the thing is, it's ridiculous.
Exactly.
I just go ahead. I just looked up. It took me a while to find, and I'm not sure why, because usually in Open Secrets or any of those places, the facts are out there. The pharmaceutical industry, as of October, just before the election, for that whole campaign, donated $2.5 million to Biden.
And what you have to remember when you're looking at those open secrets and all that money exchange is you are probably only seeing a percentage of what was done.
Right. The
Because
PACs.
they have already figured out all the loopholes in those donations. They have already figured out how they're going to approach it. And the pharmaceutical company, they have got political manipulation down to a fine art. Hence why you guys don't have any health care. They literally have control that. Hence why the US pays more in prescription drug costs than pretty much anybody else. And the real kick in the teeth is your tax dollars help do the R&D to friggin' fund the drugs being made recently. And let's be honest, they're earning it off. They're earning their money off the back of previous discoveries that they actually had no R&D development within, i.e. insulin is a perfect example of where they're off. You know,
and then they have their patents, which they just before they expire, they change one tiny little part of the formula that has nothing to do with the efficacy. They change one part and they can get a whole new patent for it.
Yep, and it's a way to maintain the patents and stop the making of generic medications. And the thing is, like right off the bat, you know what, Biden, if you really want to prove to me that you care about the people of the US and you care about that healthcare is a right, then you go after one of the major drugs that is being withheld from the American people that need it for their survival to live, and that is insulin. And let's be honest, any patents that occurred after the original discovery, as far as I'm concerned, are BS to a large degree.
Exactly.
It was given by the University of it was given to the University of Toronto, and that patent was supposed to be open for everyone, and it got bastardized by the American big pharma and other big pharma. It's the same as the EpiPens. It's just big pharma is one of the worst, and they have manipulated what I find really interesting is, where are the sons and daughters of all these senators and congressmen working, right? The ones that aren't in politics. Isn't it interesting how we're always finding out later, like Manchin's daughters, big pharma, so-and-so's involved in this, all their family members, but that doesn't have anything to do with how they're voting or what they're going to do. Really? Walk me through how that doesn't have any involvement. Because I know if I want to do something here and my family is against it, I have to deal with them. And let's be honest, I acquiesce. And if it's my child, right, there's going to be a point where I decide what's best for my child. So you're going to say Manchin's daughter, who's big pharma, right? She sits down with dad and deals are being made constantly.
Exactly. And you have to, and I'm not championing what corporations are doing, because what they're doing is disgusting. But if you're spending $2.5 million, but you're getting billions back, what's gonna make me want to? If I'm ABC Corporation and I'm spending that little and I'm getting all of these big, huge billion-dollar contracts, I'm not gonna want to stop that system.
Why else would Biden not want to give us Medicare for all? When you consider that a vast majority, more than 3/4 of Democratic voters want it, a majority of Republican voters wanted it, something like 67%, 2/3. That is a mandate. When the majority of both parties want it, and he keeps saying, no, I won't.
And he says,
well, you got to think far. Oh, sorry, Tracy.
Yeah, he keeps saying it's the cost. But yet, he increases the military's budget. Okay, now I'm not the smartest person in the world, but wouldn't you, if your mission is peace, couldn't you just cut some of the military budget and give it to healthcare? I don't know.
Well,
we have the firepower. Go ahead.
If you're talking your mission, exactly. If your mission is to save lives and save lives of American people, wouldn't that be your priority before you buy the guns to kill other people in other countries? And you know what? One of the reasons that we have to be realistic about of why pharmaceutical companies are going to push even harder in the US than they have in any other place and why they're going to hold on to your political world as tight as they can is because they're losing their grip and they're losing agreements in other countries. New Zealand came up against them, Australia, UK, Canada, all of these countries are starting to review not only the fact that they give these guys the ability to keep their patents going, but a lot of the countries are starting to review the ones that have subsidies and going to these big pharma companies. And that's the thing is there's a significant pushback going on globally, and some countries have already made the decision that they're going, no, we're going to be cutting, you can't charge us this much. This is the rate. Example, New Zealand. And I can imagine pharmaceutical companies are freaking out because they don't want that to happen in the US.
And it doesn't look.
They've got people paying thousands of dollars for medication that was invented 50 years ago. They don't want that to change. They pay big money.
Exactly. The fact that we have people choosing between food and medicine should just be enough for Medicare for all for someone. But and I hate that he presents himself as, oh, I care about the American people. No, you don't. Because if you're not talking about Medicare for all, I don't want to hear about the public option. That's not the same thing. If you're not talking about free health care for everyone, then I'm to the point I don't want to hear it anymore. I'm going to just basically just give up on even trying to convince them. So at this point, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, audience, and we'll be right back. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us for the second half of the Progressive Queens, and we're going to move into our main topic of the show, and I will set up this scenario because it's a little bit different. I asked the ladies present to pretend there is a scenario where they have been made president of the United States. And for some odd reason, Congress gives them full control to do whatever it is they want, to cut whatever program it is they want, or to decrease funding. Thank you for the suggestion, Mickey. To decrease funding for a program. And to ask them what programs would they pick to cut, which ones would they pick to be decreased. And so, Mickey, I'll let you go first.
Well, I will start with increasing social services tremendously to help with housing, to help with food. The homeless situation and the people in homes that are poor, can barely feed their kids or heat their homes is outrageous for a developed country. We need to. This isn't giving out freebies. We're paying taxes. I'm living somewhat comfortably. I didn't mind paying taxes so that somebody else could have food to give to their kids or turn the heat up. I think it's outrageous the cuts that they keep making to social services.
Which one would you cut?
Military. I would cut that at least by half and put that into, for one, social services. Put some of that money that they're being funded and pay the soldiers, pay the troops a decent salary. Help take care of veterans who are living on the streets, disabled either physically or emotionally. We send them off to fake wars, and when they come back damaged, we throw them on the street and say you're on your own.
And which one would you get rid of totally?
Go on, Kat. Let me think about that one.
Yeah, because I got mine. I know which one I would get rid of right off the bat.
Okay, I'm being elected president of the US, which is an impossibility because being a Canadian.
I know, but just pretend.
Yeah, pretending. Well, one of the first things I would do to ensure that my changes were enforced is, first and foremost, is pass a law stopping all corporate donations. That would be the one I would go after first and foremost. I would establish an audit, a formal audit, and I won't use the dreaded word of a bipartisan. I would say an outside industry, outside everyone. It would be reviewed. I would put money into the education system, would be one of my main things, along with healthcare, because I believe an educated populace is a well-informed populace and it establishes critical thinking. And I think that's one of the major components that the conservatives and has been allowed to happen throughout is it seems wherever the Republicans seem to be in charge, they cut the education funding. And then of course healthcare, which is a guarantee, is it's supposed to be, everybody deserves it, everybody should have it, everybody that in the US needs it, and there is no reason why it shouldn't be allowed. And one of the things I think that is also another thing is establishing is literally a stronger oversight board for all elected leaders, i.e. the vetting shouldn't happen almost within the parties. I think there should be a vetting for political people that is absolutely a joint effort from everyone. And the thing is, you have to submit and who you are, what you are, even beyond after your party says, yes, this person is going to be our representative, we should have a legal vetting. And that's not, vetting them for whether they, disagree with this or, they're religious and we're trying to get non-religious politicians. I think we have to have a vetting of actually what went on and a clear accounting and a vetoing ability. No, this person has committed multiple crimes, and they cannot run. It's at that point, in regards to, again, I would go after the military funding, but I would be very specific for the military funding. I would go after the contracted positions. Military funding should not touch anything to do with the troops. The troops are already suffering. The troops are already not getting what they need. The veterans are being ignored and left on the street, exactly as Mickey said. So when I go after military funding, I'm going after the contractors. I'm directly going after that because it's the contractors that have been spurring on this endless wars that the US wants to be involved in. Do you really think that people wake up and go, oh, I have to invade this country? From what I've seen with the elected representatives throughout all of our countries, very few of them even geography of the world or what countries are invading. I don't know how many US congressmen and senators I've heard them referring to Africa as a country instead of a continent. So how can you even get them to acknowledge what countries they're invading when they don't even know they exist? It's absolutely ridiculous. And my first step would be for cutting the military funding, would be taking the bulk of the funding, looking how much it's being paid out to contractors. And I think Katie Porter did a really good example of that, of pieces where you could literally get this piece, what was it, Mickey, for $100 or less than $100, and the military contractors were charging the US government thousands.
Decades ago, they were saying
and this is
a $500 hammer.
Yeah,
that's what they call it, a $500 hammer, and that was decades ago.
Yeah, and like silly things that we have to look at and go, like for example, I always go back to one of the perfect examples with the U.S. space, and Tracy will like this against the Star Trek thing, the millions of dollars that the U.S. spent on figuring out how to write in space because of the fact that ink is liquid and responds to gravity. And the response was, what about a pencil?
Uh-huh.
So millions of dollars were spent creating a pen when you had pencil, like stupid things and the thing is, we look at another great example. How much money went into warp speed for that vaccine that the Trump family backed? And I'm sure they have lots of money invested in it. Like little things like this, as a countries, and that's Canada and the US, we have really got to stop these corporations from owning and they say, oh, well, it brings jobs to my area and that's why I support it. It's BS. It's not the jobs. You're getting graft. You're getting money. And that's the beginning and end of it. And that's one of the biggest things I would say is we need to have a stronger policing of politicians and their backers and funding, and right off Citizens United gone. That would be one of my first things immediately. Gone. No corporate. If you can't get donations from an individual person into a certain amount, you have over 300 million people in the US. Sorry, let's level the playing field. And that's with people donating.
Which agency would you cut?
Which agency would I cut? Ooh. There's quite a few that I would kind of veto. I guess I would wait until I see the auditing, because sometimes I'm scared that we go after an agency and not realizing, like, hey, that could be helping. It's helping this one little thing. Like, I don't have enough knowledge to say I would go after that specific agency.
See, you better than
Right
me.
now, at this point in time, I would go after the what is it, Space Force?
Oh, yeah. And just bring it back under NASA. Like, why are we playing buggers? Seriously?
I knew when I came up with this question, I immediately knew who I wanted to cut. So I think if I were president, thank you for electing a Black female president. But
okay, Nina.
The first thing I would do would just be, my number one issue is Medicare for all. Goodbye, Anthem, Cigna, Humana, all the other ones. Bye. Get a job with the government, because commercial insurance, unless you're getting plastic surgery, it's gone. Bye-bye. Second thing I would do, I would have public financing of elections. No more corporate giving. You get a certain amount of signatures, we'll give you a certain amount of money. That's all the money that you can raise. And if you have to raise money from an individual, it can't exceed $25. That's all you're going to get. That's it. You don't need all of these billions and billions of dollars to run for an office. I don't care which one. Third thing I would do is, in terms of cutting, the military would be the first place I'm looking. There's no excuse of why we're spending billions of dollars, wars in outer space, weapons that we don't ever use. It's just ridiculous. I would also come up with mandatory housing. I don't want to see a homeless person anywhere. You mandatorily have to build that person a house, or convert some of these malls to a place where a homeless family, a homeless vet, or a homeless individual can go. They're getting shelter, they're getting job training, they're engaging in social services. That'd be the third thing I would do. I would also get a law to vet the police. I am so tired of police officers. There's no across the board vetting process. They get these police officers, and I don't know whether they go to KKK rallies or something, because they're getting these least qualified people and they're expecting the police to do all these things, and they're racist. So I would definitely say we need a better vetting process.
I say we need to set up a national database, and every department must report any complaints, any compliment, must report any reports that they get on their officers. And if they don't report and they're caught, they lose funding. If they hire somebody from that database who has a bad history, they lose funding.
Yeah.
And the other thing is anonymity. I'm sick of police officers committing crimes in this district, and then they get fired, and then they get to go to this one and get a job. No more. If you're fired because you cause death or harm to someone, you can't get hired for law enforcement anywhere. Just make it nationwide. Let's just get rid of all of these.
But along with that, we need to change our laws. We
Exactly.
need there's from the top down because laws were written, especially, I mean, the black code. They were written, misdemeanors were written specifically
To
for
put,
black people.
to put us
Yep.
in jail.
They,
And
you jaywalk when you're a white person, a cop might say something to you, maybe. Jaywalk when you're black, and they will grab your arm, immediately yell, "Stop resisting," before you even react. And then he has it on his body cam that he said stop resisting. So he's got proof the man resisted. And then they escalate from there, and the man winds up in jail for
or,
jaywalking.
or
There-
dead.
There's or dead. There's dozens of those laws that were written specifically during the Reconstruction
Yep.
so they could put black people back into slavery.
Yep. And another thing I think I would do day one is when you turn 18, you are automatically registered to vote. I wouldn't
Yes.
waste
Yeah.
any more of this time with all this. Oh, you gotta go. No, when you're 18, you are automatically registered to vote. I would get rid of all these stupid laws in Florida, Texas, and all these other laws that restrict voter right expanded. Let people vote 20 let people vote the day of the register to vote the day of an election. Let them I don't know, mail in their ballots. Matter of fact, I would do away with all polling sites and give everybody the option of just mailing in their ballots. It's more convenient, it costs way less money, and you just hire a couple of people to count those ballots when they come in. That would be my thing day one. In terms of trimming, I said I would cut the military, absolutely. But the one I would get rid of is NASA. I can't understand NASA at all. I don't understand why they exist. I don't get why we should go. And maybe somebody's going to disagree with me. I already know. But I can't understand. We can't get this planet right. So what we're going to do is spend billions of dollars and go to these other planets for some reason or other. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand why NASA exists. Somebody explain this to me because I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Okay, I'm torn on that one. I half agree and half disagree because a lot of advances have been made
Medically,
because of NASA.
yeah,
Medically,
engineering,
even
everything.
and yeah, everything. A lot we have learned a lot of technology only because of NASA saying how are we going to do this in outer space, and then we find out it works great for something here. I would stop for now at least the exploration of other planets, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't stop the
it's
investigating and the
yeah, it's my least
See,
favorite.
I'm
It's my least favorite. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm sitting here like, okay, maybe I'm missing something. I'm like, Bob, why are
well,
we going to
what
Mars?
about improving the technology on jets? People fly every day. A lot of that came from NASA.
yeah.
Yeah, that was in the past. What are they doing now?
The thing is, NASA right now. The thing is, there's a separation I think that needs to be looked at, and that's Space Force and NASA. The NASA itself has been suffering from budget cuts significantly over the years. I don't know if a lot of people are aware, and they've had to contract out major components, and they've got a lot of their R&D being done exteriorly and not within NASA, right? And one of the reasons they had Space Force was so they could grab onto some of that military budget, i.e., the big money ticket. But NASA itself, the benefit of working for the future, I don't think that we can stop questing for the future and what could possibly happen by, severing and looking at it and going, oh, okay, it's of no use now. As Mickey has mentioned and myself, like there are many advancements that have happened in the technologies that were advanced through NASA in the actual math. When Katherine Johnson figured out those calculations and brought together that information, that has gone forward to do some of the most advanced mathematical calculations that were used throughout industry. She was able to establish the ability to do that because of what she did within NASA and take the calculations beyond what was already known. And the thing is, you can't stop questing for the future because your present is so horrendous. And as much as I say cut the military budget, I wouldn't go against NASA, because that to me is a quest for the future. We don't know what we'll find. We don't know what's out there. And I think it's essential that we keep going forward to find out, to keep looking, to keep, and in my mind, going forward to the future, I know how it was when the Canada Arm, like how proud we were as Canadians, because we don't have a lot of, we're tied directly to yours. How proud I was to see the Canadian Arm up there. And the thing is, when you walk away from a quest for the future, aren't you just saying then that you're willing to stay stagnant? Because
I think my point is,
I'm thinking what's happening here, like with Mars, and same thing with how, I'm not a big quest for going to other planets, but finding out the knowledge, how to grow things, how to survive. Let's be honest, we keep wrecking Earth. We're going to need those technologies to literally survive on Earth. We have parts of this world now that are literally been rendered uninhabitable or non-arable due to corporations and the destruction of our planet. And some of the information that they're gathering on how to grow food and how to do this and that is probably going to be really conducive to us surviving just on this planet if things don't change.
I think I see your point, but I'm still like, get rid of it. This is my only reason why.
Yeah.
I think things are so bad here. What am I caring? Yeah. I can't live on Mars. There's no way right now, and I know you're saying future focus, but I'm like, no, we need to get this planet right. And then maybe, once things get to normal go, but I'm like, And I'll tell you,
like Kat said, we need to get this planet right. But some of the things that NASA is investigating on maybe how to grow foods on these other planets will help get this planet right.
I want to agree with you guys so bad, but I'm like, I don't see it. But I'll tell you another one I want to get rid of: the President's Council on Fitness. Are you serious? I already know I'm fat. I don't need some millions of dollars spent on some office to tell me get up and work out. I know that I'm not doing it, and I should. Why do we have a Surgeon General? Why do we have a President's Fitness on Council? I know why we have a CDC. I don't want anybody to say that. So I'm thinking, the Surgeon General works with the CDC and the HSS. No, it doesn't. What? I don't. That's another one. I don't get it.
Well, the thing is, where I go with the President's Fitness Council, and this is where I agree with you, Tracy. If it's of no use and no functionality, i.e., if the Fitness Council, one of its roles was going to insurance companies, okay, now you will cover when people go to gyms, because we are working towards, and then I would say you're doing something useful. Because you know what, telling people to get up and work out is really not possible. And this is where I get so frustrated. You have people with chronic illnesses, they're in chronic pain. You also have people that work 12-hour shifts that go home and take care of 4, 5, 6 children at a time. Or they're, because of the economic situation, multiple generation households. Oh, by the way, your little pittance that you're making due on a month, we want you to spend $25 to $100 for a gym membership. Get a grip, get in reality.
Yeah, that's one.
Not going to happen.
I mean, just go tomorrow. I mean, just buy it. Again, another one I would cut: personal Surgeon General. I'm looking up. I'm like, okay, what does the Surgeon General do? Okay, they got to do something, and I'm just totally missing it. I'm like, okay, no, we're spending. We're spending so much money on that President's Council of Fitness. And I'm like, for what? We couldn't.
The thing is, with no teeth in any of these things, Surgeon General has no teeth. The President's Council has no teeth. So why are you putting money into it if it can't do anything? They have deregulated things down to the point of non-usefulness.
It's like a publicity office. I'm like, okay, but if you put the Surgeon General over the CDC, okay, then I could be like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense.
Yep.
Because the CDC actually does something. The
Yep.
HSS actually does something. But I'm like, those two, they could go tomorrow. I'd be like, thank you. Another one that I think should go. I know people are gonna just scream at me for saying this.
Yeah.
People are gonna be like, I can't believe you said that. We need to stop with this whole I don't even know how to forward this. We need to get rid of the retirement plans for congressional offices. Why are you running for office just to get a good pension plan? That shouldn't even be your job. There should be something called, okay, you serve 5 years, that's it, next person up, and be done.
Same thing in Canada. Totally.
Why are you serving? How long has Mitch McConnell been? Mitch McConnell has been in office since I was a child. And I'm
30 years. 30 years. He was just elected for 6 more.
And Senator Feinstein has been there a long time. Nancy Pelosi's been there a long time. Clyburn's been. I'm like, how are these? And I know people say, oh, we have elections. No, the president, we have a lifetime ban on the president. He cannot serve more than 2 terms. That's it. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
Why we don't have that? And I know this doesn't have anything to do with the budget per se, but taxpayers are wasting money paying the insurance for them, basically, because it's not coming out of their check. They get free health care, they get free pension, they get some of them get security, but apparently not all of them. I'm like, we're wasting all of this money to fly them around and give them pensions. Some of that money could be going on their district. So when you get to year 6, next person up, and let's just keep this going.
It would prevent, if they did the term limits exactly like you're saying, Tracy, it would actually help deal with the graph. It would. Because when you think about it, right now, when they buy a politician, perfect example, the turtle, right? When they bought the turtle, that turned out to be a really good 30-year investment for them. They paid for him, they've got him going. And that's the thing is, and when you put term limits in, really, how hard will those corporations? They won't have someone that they've paid and invested in and paid all this money to go forward. And the thing is, so if you did term limits and you got rid of Citizens United, that would be it. You would see a change in government, because even if the other sides get elected, right? When you're talking those term limits, right? So say if you have a progressive going forward and has done a lot of work, like example, AOC and stuff in their areas and brought money into their areas, but and everybody's going, well, then we'd lose them. But think about it. You would have other people fighting harder to get that position after 6 years and keep the progress going. But right now, what you've got is a bunch of old fogies, and I'll say it, McConnell, Pelosi, Feinstein, all these, even Lindsey Graham.
Schumer.
Like, enough is
enough.
Schumer. Oh yeah, enough is enough. These guys, they're literally sitting on their laurels and feeling like they have to do nothing in regards to the Democrats. And the Republicans, and let's be honest, they're all collecting paychecks above and beyond what they're getting from their Senate and Congress representative payrolls. They are. And that's the thing is, but they're not going to get those checks if they're only getting 6 years.
And along with that, we need to stop. We need to stop the lobbying.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. So true. Like,
big time.
You should not get to be like unelected to Congress and then be a lobby. Well, you can be a lobbyist, but you can't lobby the people who you just let know. You're not going to be able to do that. And I know that's a whole freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah type of question, but no, you're not going to get to do that. That's just...
If it's going to be a freedom of speech issue.
Go ahead, Nick.
If it's going to be a freedom of speech issue, then I and you and everybody else should be allowed access, just like the lobbyists are. Can I knock on my senator's door and say I need your attention for 10 minutes? No, but a lobbyist can.
Yeah, you have to make it a point.
Another thing that which
go ahead.
hits me in regards with the corporations, right, is this constant payout that they're doing, and the lobbyists and their availability is, and the revolving door is corporations themselves. When you sign on to do various, and I've had to review contracts for myself even, they have a component in the contract that you cannot be involved with competition for X amount of time, that you cannot, go and work for the competition and blah, blah, blah. We could have the same thing in government to stop that revolving door, i.e., you were one of the things, if you sign on and become an elected representative 4 years or 5 years after your election, you cannot work as a lobbyist. We're not saying a lifetime. We're saying possibly at least an election cycle. Because again, you're talking people's freedom to find employment or whatever. But there were rules. The thing is, when we look back historically, there were rules regarding some of this. They weren't written down hard enough, or they've been ignored, but there was rules and regulations in regarding this that have either been deregulated out of existence or have just been thoroughly ignored. Or
let's do the reverse of that. If you are a lobbyist and or a big Wall Street executive, you cannot be appointed to a position in the government.
Or run for office. Well,
run for office, I don't like, but I can handle that.
Yeah,
but if you were a lobbyist,
I thought about that. I'm like,
if you were a lobbyist or a big Wall Street executive or a big corporate executive, you cannot be appointed to a position in government because you've already established your prejudice,
your bias.
Right. Yep. And I'm for cutting
exactly.
congressional pay too, because I think they get paid too much personally. What is it?
What is it? 170,000 a year?
170,000.
They started 174, and they work 170 days a year at the most.
100. They don't even work half. That's like half a year. They don't
Not
work
even
the whole year. What are they doing?
The average person, if they only work one job, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, works 260 hours a year. One person with one job. They only work 170 days a year at the most. That's if they show up every time.
And I'm definitely for cutting congressional pay. One, you shouldn't be serving in Congress if you're about making money. Like that shouldn't even be, like, if you're thinking about running for Congress and you think, oh boy, I could get rich off of this. No, I don't need you as my legislator. So I'm all for cutting congressional pay by, I would say half.
I
don't think it's the pay though. They're going after the lobby money.
Keep the pay, but make them work all year except for holidays and stuff like the rest of the people.
Yep. And they shouldn't be able to spend half their year campaigning. And they wouldn't have to if you knew that the longest you could serve, back to your idea, Tracy, right? Term limits. If you know that you can only serve 6 years or 2 terms, right? You aren't going to spend your whole last set of years campaigning, right? So you're actually going to work. So it kind of serves all the purposes. Is number one, term limits for everyone across the board. Number two, they can't take any money from corporations. We get rid of Citizens Reunited. Number three, we have an attendance record. And then the thing is, oh, well, we have to go back to our constituents. No, we want to prove it. Anything greater than 10% non-attendance either in your congressional office in DC or in your office at home, that every day you miss, just like everybody else, no pay, no leave no pay. And that's the thing is, and start treating them like employees, because that's all they are.
Yeah, and that's why I say cut. This is why I say cut their pay. One, I think they get paid way too much to do the job that they're doing. Because again, your intent should be, I want to serve my community by legislating things my community wants. You should not be in it for the money. You should not get to carry your spouse on your Cadillac insurance, because let's face it, they have in terms of health insurance, they have the Cadillac plan of Cadillac plans. I mean, their health insurance, I'm like, they get what? They get what? They get what?
They should pay into their health insurance.
That's
They should
exactly
pay
what
into their pensions like
absolutely
everybody else does.
like everybody else. So if you're not getting
Exactly.
a salary, which okay, that's an idea, then I say make them pay into their own health insurance, make them pay into their own pensions, into their own IRAs. Take it out of their check.
Exactly.
Maybe
I
Exactly.
think if they worked the full year, I don't think 174,000 is outrageous, especially nowadays. But only if they only work a half a year for that. If they worked a full year, if they paid into their pensions, if they paid into their health insurance, I could live with the 174,000.
I could
Yeah.
too if they were doing all those things. But
Yeah, they aren't special, and it's time to start. And this is where you put the 6-year term limit would also stop this special and this star power and this BS that you see. You know what? Think about it. Pelosi would have been gone how many years ago? Schumer would have been gone how many years ago? McConnell would have been gone how many years ago? How many young people would we have had emerge and come forward in politics that actually are more aware of the current state? Guess what? I don't think Schumer, Pelosi, McConnell, any of those people have ever seen a true homeless camp or really understand what's going on. But I can guarantee you, anybody that's taking a bus to work or has to go to work every day or goes out of their house, and 90% of these major cities in in the western part of the world, i.e. the UK, Canada, and the US, see homeless people daily. Even the smallest communities see homeless people daily. But guess what? These people that have been put in their ivory tower for the last couple decades, and that's literally what they have been, they've essentially become, I've been watching a lot of English histories, right? British histories, UK from the 17th century and before that. And it's amazing how much the stratification of society when it was, the peerage, i.e., earls, duchesses, dukes, and all this crap, has essentially just moved over into this electoral world to the point now, and let's be honest, we have been electing people because of their familial links. In Canada, we got Justin. Why did Justin even get noticed as a politician? He was a friggin' high school teacher. Why? Because his dad was Pierre Trudeau. How many Kennedys have been elected? They didn't even have to be competent Kennedys. They've been riding on Bobby's coattails forever. And
Look at
John's.
what happened. Look at what happened with Pelosi when she announced that no Democrats were to primary incumbents.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
she backed Kennedy. Not
Yep,
only backed Kennedy against Markey, but she actually said it out loud. She said,
yep.
we need to keep the Kennedy dynasty going.
Why? Why? They aren't anybody special. They're a family. And that's the thing is this is back to Tracy's 2-term limits. We would cut into these dynasties because it would be like, think about it. If I was president now, I will only get to do the 2 terms. So I can't run for any more office for another 6 years or whatever the limitation is. And that it starts to flip. It starts to clean out all the rubbish. It starts to get all the graft gone.
because if you only have 6 years and that's all you get,
Yep.
for both the Congress and the Senate, that's what I want to make clear.
Yep.
No, let me take it back, because senators get 6 terms. So they would just get 1 term off the top. So that's how they would get their 6 years, because Senate is 6 years, Congress is 2, and they go every 2 years to get reelected. So if all you know is, oh, I got 6 years, I'm going to get as much done as I possibly can. But good luck getting that to be an idea, because I don't even think there's a progressive that's going to champion that one. I really don't.
But the thing, part of the reason, and nobody's going to champion it, is like, look around, when you look around those houses in Canada and in the US and even in the UK, like, these are all old people. You're cutting off their jobs. And you know what? So they aren't going to vote to have their jobs cut off. And this is where you need to have people coming forward and saying, well, why do you think Pelosi? I always go back to her Sub-Zero. Pelosi, what part of not having money to feed the family do you think you understand? Do you really grasp that not only do people not have the Sub-Zero, they don't have the money to buy ice cream for their children, let alone their an elderly woman. So give me a break. You haven't been part of what has been the American experience. The American experience is scraping by, not having enough money to pay for your health care, being constantly in fear that if you do get sick, you could lose absolutely everything you have accumulated. And as a child, or even I've had friends that are, no, I can't, I'm not going to get diagnosed. I'm not going to the doctor because a diagnosis could impede my family. It's not right. And the thing is, when you get people that have been so far distant from it, as we've seen, like, how many times have we seen people go into government and be good people? And then it doesn't always take 10 years, but it seems to take a while, and they get further and further and further from why they were sent there.
And that's why I keep saying, if you had 6 years and you're progressive, because I'm not counting the other duopoly, if you know you've got 6 years, all of this crap about the filibuster and all parliamentarian and whatever other excuse Democrats want to use, it would be literally gone. But
look at Chuck Schumer. He's been my senator for over 20 years. We have not heard a peep out of him in the last 4.5 years. Suddenly, he just woke up and he's starting to do some good stuff. Why? He's up for re-election next year. Think about it. 4.5 years, he was off in the corner sleeping. I didn't even know he was still alive. All of a sudden, he's come to life. Only 20 years he's been a senator.
And that's another problem. That's another problem that the 6-year term limit would solve, because you have too many politicians, and I would almost say 100%, but I'm sure that's too high.
Darn close.
It's really close that you have them just waiting. Okay, here comes another election cycle. I better do X, Y, Z to get reelected. They're not doing it because they care. And then when they do it, it's some halfway cockamamie. I promised 2,000, but no, I'm going to give you 1,400 because you already got 600, and you just didn't say that. And you're, I don't want to go down that road. I'm not going to keep going down that road. But we have too many politicians, when they choose to do something, it's this halfway mess that isn't going to solve anything, that makes the problem even worse. And I'm just like, that's why I think, term limits. And I'm still sitting there paying half, but I see you guys' point of at least make them pay for their own health care.
And the thing is, with term limits, how many? One of the best examples I remember down ballot. It was a down ballot race. It was actually our city council, and our Nanaimo city council, when I first moved to Nanaimo, pretty much hadn't changed. It was the same 6 people running running the show for over a decade. Nothing was happening. Nothing good was happening in the city. So I attended a council meeting just out of curiosity. And of course, I had a couple issues I wanted to bring up. There were people sleeping. There were elected representative. They literally had to wake him up to vote. And my comment, and I made it very loudly, why is he being woken up to vote when he slept through the discussion? How can his vote be informed? But literally, we have a bunch of people there. They know how they're going to vote. Any of these discussions are mute because they're all being paid, and they've all been paid by the same people for the last few decades. They don't care, and they've been getting away with it. Like I said, these corporations, the corporations are the retirement plan of the elected officials, and that's what we have to eliminate. Because when somebody's only elected for 6 years, they don't have the power to keep changing and guaranteeing that their corporate overlords will get what they want. And 6 years works for me across the board. And I'd like to see it in Canada. Everybody gets limits. Enough is enough.
Exactly. That's a good
point. And if you're really good, and if you did a great job in that 6 years, in another 6 years, people will remember you and reelect you.
No, now
if you did a crappy job, no, they won't.
6 years, period. I don't want to see them come back.
But the thing is, but yeah, that's true.
And then come back. I don't want you to come back because I think that's how you get new ideas to emerge.
Exactly.
If you get 6 years, that's it. I want to see you coming back. We're not gonna get we're not gonna get President Obama to come back and be president again. I mean, that's not gonna happen. He's already served his 2-year term. But again, guys, I hate to always end it on such a downer note, but we're gonna end this portion of Progressive Queens and move on to our bonus, which you all can get by supporting us on Patreon, and the links will be in the description.